Welcome everybody to another Lessons with Leah. This is Stacie Fletcher and I'm here with Leah Clapper, and we are talking through the mindset of a collegiate athlete and getting some mindset tips, but also doing some mindset coaching. So Leah, catch us up on where you are in the process. Just to let everybody else know, I got to actually go and watch a Gators meet in person for the first time. It was so much fun. So they were amazing and did awesome. But tell me what's going on.
Yes, last Friday night was so much fun. We as a team had an amazing meet, and it was just overall a very high energy night. And you know, wipe your smile off your face during a meet when things are going well. So it was a great night, and I'm excited for our next travel meet this weekend.
Where are you guys headed to next?
We are headed to Arkansas on Thursday. And
Okay.
as far as my personal journey, I know that the past couple weeks we've been talking a little bit about dealing with minor injuries and coming back from setbacks and dealing with the disappointment of when things don't go your way and they're going differently than you had hoped or envisioned, and how to get back on track without letting yourself spiral into all of the negatives. And this past week, I did not get to compete yet, but it was a new experience for me so far this season. So last week in the gym, I was doing full routines again. Hallelujah. That was the first full week where
Yay.
I was able to do my routines, and I feel like I'm back to full gymnastics now, which is really exciting. But I did have a couple of weeks off. So I knew that if I wanted to have even a chance at making the lineup, I was really going to need to show that I was ready and put in the numbers and the consistency that I needed to put in for the coaches to even feel like maybe I could be an option. And I don't think I was too successful at that. I was fine. I had decent days. I made most of my routines, and I had some uncharacteristic mistakes. And one day on beam, especially, was a bit rough. I kept making the same mistakes again and again, and I wasn't in my head too much about it. It was just like one of those bad days that
Yeah.
I knew if I was a coach, I wouldn't have put me in the lineup. And so on Friday night, I got to warm up at the meet, which was good. A little bit getting back into the swing of the meet format and moving on that equipment and the new scenery. First meet out, it's always a little bit different. And it almost felt like it was a first meet out for me since I had been a little bit of a different role the past couple of weeks. And so while my teammates were competing beam, I was watching them and really happy for them because they all did awesome. But I finally had that burning in my heart that was like, I am physically capable of being out there and I want to be out there. I know what it feels like to nail a routine, and it's been too long since I've done that at a meet since last nationals. So I had that like burning desire. I want to be back out there, and that was instantly motivating, but also it's not a good feeling in the moment. It's like
Yeah.
a good and a bad. It's frustrating, but it's also invigorating in a
Yeah.
way. So this week we talked a lot about elevate our confidence. That's our little phrase that our team has decided for the week. And that resonated with me a lot because I know in order to get back out there and compete and make the lineups, I need to elevate my own confidence and show that off to my coaches and to the world. I
Yeah.
know that when I finally get to compete again, I want to do it well. And I want to be ready and confident and sharp and exquisite and all of the things that I can be, not just going through the motions. So it was my goal this week, and we still have more practice, so continuing it on. But to bring a little bit more of that edge back into my gymnastics instead of just being like, "Yay, I'm doing routines again. All right, when's my time to shine?" Just sitting back and waiting. I know I need to fight for it and really show that I want it and show that I can do it and I need to be consistent and have perfection, not perfection, definitely not perfection every time, but show excellence on a regular basis.
Mm.
Yesterday was a really good day for that. I stepped up to the challenge of doing a cold set at practice, so no warming up, just right away go, and I nailed my beam routine for the
Love it.
and then I nailed everything else. I didn't wobble the whole day, which was great,
Yeah.
and it felt like a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. So it's always helpful. Remember that so if we look at the thought model from Brooke Castillo, every action we take always comes from an emotion. And then that emotion always is derived from a feeling. Sometimes they're or from a thought. Sometimes they're unconscious thoughts, so we're not always sure what they are. But it's always helpful to like be a detective and try to figure out what those were so that we can replicate more of the ones that help us and we can understand the ones that aren't. So last week when you were on beam and you weren't making what you wanted to make, what do you think was the feeling that was driving like, what specifically happened? What's the neutral fact? Like, what's the you said you made uncharacteristic mistakes. What was the mistake?
Falling on my series,
Okay, falling on your series.
one spring back layout.
On which one? 2nd, 3rd?
Oh, the last one.
The last one. Okay. So we fall on the 2nd layout. We just wanna be, like, as neutral and factual as possible, right? So
Yeah.
what was the feeling that we think created that? Well, let's go with this. What was the action that led to you falling, if you can guess?
Well, I know what it was. It was because when I was stepping in for my second layout, I was letting my hips turn to the side and it was making me go crooked.
Yeah,
And I had that correction from my coach and could feel it. That's what I was doing, but I was just having trouble fixing it. I
yeah,
even on the floor, like I took a step back after I'd fallen on a couple and went down to the floor and did some drills, but I was still doing the same thing wrong on the
yeah,
floor. And it was just one of those days where it's like, what is going on? Like,
yeah,
why can't I do this? I can do this every other day. And I just felt like my body wasn't working with me and I couldn't figure it out. It
yeah,
turns out that my like hip alignment was off. And whenever that happens to me, that's like a pattern. I usually go to the right side. So not to make an excuse, but that was a tangible thing that I went to see the trainer. We like did some things to put my hip alignment back in place, and the next day it was better. The problem with that is, okay, what if that happens at a meet and it has before, and I need to be able to deal with it
yeah,
instead of just, making the excuse that, oh, like my body's a little torqued. I can't make it today. And then letting myself believe that, oh, I just can't do it today type
yeah.
of thoughts instead of, um,
Do you think
thinking
that's maybe
that
the thought that you were having, like, "Oh, I just can't do it today?"
I think at the beginning,
Yeah,
I was I made my first one. That was also
okay,
a cold set day, and it went well. And then the pressure was off because our assignment was cold set routine. If you nail it, you have 2 more routines. If you stick it, you have 3 more, and if you miss, you have 5. So I went up there, I nailed my cold set. I was feeling pretty good about it. But then I didn't make another series for the rest of the day. And I had to kind of give up on the assignment because my abs were starting to get really sore from doing so many and failing at it. And
yeah,
so at the beginning, I was like, oh, all right, let me fix this. Let me try again. And then every time that I tried again and it didn't work, I was like more into the can I really do this today? And
yeah,
the hopes started going down.
yeah.
I wanted
You
to
know
I
what?
wanted to push through at the beginning, and I was. I was trying I gave it my all the whole day. There became a point where I was like, "Alright," like my old coach always used to say, "You're beating a dead horse. You just gotta come back tomorrow." And
Yes.
so I talked to my coach, and we came up with some drills, and then I was like, "I'm gonna do those drills I'm gonna be ready to attack on Thursday. And
Yeah.
I did. Thursday was a much better day.
Yeah. Well, and so here's what it reminds me of, because what was happening wasn't that you were having a emotion that was creating actions that you weren't wanting to take. You were taking the same actions, but because your body was a little off, those actions were giving you a different result, right?
Yeah, and thus different emotions. So it's almost the
Well,
reverse.
then it circles back around. Then that result becomes your circumstance. And now your circumstance was I fell, which created a different emotion and then that went there. But going to the first part where you were doing the actions the same way you always do them when you make it, it reminds me so much of gymnasts, and this is for all of you listening, that when they go to a meet and the equipment is different. And so they do the skill the same way they're used to doing it, but the bar doesn't give the same way, or the board doesn't give the same way. And so then they immediately are like, I just coached one of my level 10s on this. She's like, I just felt like I was incapable of doing the vault because the board was so dead. And so we like talked through what does that look like to actually adjust on the fly, knowing that you actually are going to have to change your actions a little bit to get that result when the circumstances changed a little bit. So I
Right.
feel like this is a little bit the same, and maybe is something we could work through of if this ever happened in a meet. So like if this ever happened in a meet and you feel like, oh, my hips are off, um, what might be the things that you could do to shift and still make those even though it's different than how you're used to doing them.
Right, and it's all about adapting, and I think in
Yeah, like
any
how would you adapt? Like what actions would you take to adapt to that?
it's happened before,
Yeah.
and sometimes I can figure it out, and sometimes it's like I I think about a specific thing, like arching more, using my arms, like keywords, going back to those basic tools that we all have that sometimes we forget about, whether that's visualizing a good one or you thinking about your keywords, mental choreography type of stuff. One thing that works a lot for me is taking a deep breath and saying it's just your arms.
Yeah.
All you got to focus on is your arms, or just jump and bringing
Well,
it down into a
let me
basic.
say it this
Um,
way. What if you had gone to the trainer after the first like you messed up one.
yeah.
You went to the trainer and they're like, "Oh, your hips are off." And you're like, "Oh," and they're like, "But we don't have we can't fix it right now." So you're just gonna have to adjust in the skill, knowing that the problem is your hips are off. What do you think you would change in order to adjust for that day?
Well, yeah, that's when I go back to the
So you would
corrected
adjust your arms?
and adapt, and I don't know if I would to, like, try to jump to the left, but usually it is there is time, maybe not between warm-up turns. So what happens if that happens, like, during our quick warm-up turns, there's not enough time, but usually there's enough time to, like, do a quick fix before I compete or
Okay.
while we're warming up another event. So the thing would be to go and try to fix the problem, but if it's more of an equipment thing that can't be changed, I find what has helped me in some situations because, oh my gosh, there's been a lot of those where it just feels like this isn't working out, but it's me, so you have to figure it out.
Exactly.
And thinking getting in your own head is usually a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
And right at the beginning, talking to a coach or a teammate in a calm way, not freaking out like, "Oh my god, I don't think I can do this today. This is going wrong." It's more like, "All right, this feels off. What can I do to fix it? Do you have any suggestions for me? Or is there a correction you can give me so we can figure this out? Or what are your thoughts about this?"
Yeah.
And your coaches and your teammates are 99% of the time there to support you, and I'm
Yeah.
really sorry if they're not for some reason.
Yeah.
But you can work through it together. It doesn't have to be something that is automatically going to be a disastrous frustration. And one example of that that I can think about is bars. A lot of times I go to meet and the bars are more bouncy or more stiff than
Yes.
I'm used to. And just asking, like, if it's something that they can change by loosening the rails, like, that's a 5-second conversation. But if it's something that, that's as loose as they go, they're stuck in the ground, then how can I adjust my gymnastics to fix that? Maybe that's, pushing your shoulders more over the bar on your handstand or whatever it might be. But usually somebody else from a different perspective will have a suggestion, and I find that's really helpful. And that's something that I did working through the series problem last week, asking my coach. And usually when something like that happens, when I fall on 5 or 6 in a row, that's time for tears or time for trying to go to the bathroom and get myself together and come back out and do it better, praying that it's gonna go well and getting in your head like, "Oh my gosh, this is done whatever, whatever, whatever."
Yeah.
But it was calm, it was fine. I didn't have a good day, but it didn't affect the rest of my week. It didn't affect the rest of my practice because I was calm about it. So, it was a little frustrating, but, just came
Well,
back
and I
today
love that
better.
perspective because that is such a different action to take. Like, when you kind of are, like, not getting a skill that you have, so it's different when it's like, "I never can do this skill," but when it's a skill that you have and all of a sudden something's gone wrong, gymnasts always assume something's wrong with me. I'm doing something wrong. Something's wrong with me, like, more meaning more like my ability to just, like, be a good gymnast. And so then that creates tears and frustrations and all of that, right?
Yeah,
But instead, what you did was like, "Okay, how can I get help? Like, this isn't working, so how can I get help?" And, like, that change of thought completely changed the trajectory, right? You went and got help from the trainer, you got help from your coach, you did some drills, instead of kind of going into, like, self-pity, "Something's wrong with me, I'm not good enough, I'm never gonna make the lineup, oh no, I've ruined all my chances." And that's where I see so many gymnasts go, is that when we go into that, like, that party of, like, something's wrong, instead of being able to say, "Okay, I'm not doing this well today. So how can I get help in order to do it better?" You
yeah.
know?
And sometimes you do have to figure things out on your own,
Yeah.
but a lot of times you can lean on the people that are there to
Yeah.
support you and or you can support other people. Like, oftentimes when I'm in my head, cheering for other people helps me a ton.
Yeah.
And, pushing my efforts to help a teammate out and support them, I don't know what it does, but it's magic,
Yeah.
and usually it flips the switch on the
Because
attitude.
it shifts your emotions and then you're always taking action out of your emotion. So if you can shift your emotions, whether it's what you're thinking about or just literally putting yourself into a different emotion, then you'll start feeling differently and then taking those new actions. For
Totally.
sure. So
And
I love that.
a couple other things that I think of that I think helped me have a great day yesterday,
Yeah, so let's move into that
because
part. Like, how do we then shift it to having a great day?
oftentimes it's easy to focus on, "Oh, I had a bad day, why did this happen?" But I had a good day yesterday, or people have good days all the time, but we never think about what we did to make it a good day. And
Yes.
we all want more good days. So it makes sense for us to think about how we cultivated that. And
So
looking
what was
at
the, like,
that,
result that you had? So we're saying good day, but let's get specific. What was the result that you had yesterday that you loved and that you wanna replicate?
that I just felt on. I was
Okay.
in a flow on beam specifically. The other events didn't go quite as well, but we're focusing on beam right now, I suppose. I didn't wobble on anything. I nailed all my stuff. I stuck a bunch of dismounts and I felt present the whole time. I wasn't thinking
Mm.
ahead to the whole assignment. I was focused on one action at a time and one routine at a time. And I had a smile on my face the whole time. It was a fun day and it was very successful.
Yeah.
And I want practice to go like that again tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll see if it
So
does.
so let's dissect it. So your result was that you nailed everything on beam. and the actions that you took to get that result, where you stayed present in the moment. You took one action at a time, one skill at a time, one routine at a time. You smiled.
I did.
Like, you literally change your brain chemistry when you smile, right? It
Yeah,
helps shift you into that. So you smiled probably as a result, but also you can smile ahead of time to create that, right?
yeah.
What else
And
do you think
I
that you did?
I supported my teammates
Support a
as
team.
well. One of my teammates came over to beam and she was like, "Oh my gosh, it's cold set day. I hate not being able to warm up." And she had this worried look, and I've been there before. I I mean, even 5 minutes before, I was like, "Oh my god, it's cold set day." But for some reason, I just was ready to attack it. And I was like, "You got this. You know your skills. We're gonna do this together. We got it. Like, let's go." And just like a quick little, "Hey, you got this. We both are gonna do really well at this. Let's do it together." And I cheered for another one of my teammates who showed her routine right before me, and she did awesome. And all three of us that were on beam at the same time, we had fabulous days, and we were just kind of supporting each other through it. I also thought about successes instead of failures. One thing that my team talked about before we started season with Doc Widman, he came in and did some mindset stuff with us. And he talked a lot about looking at your highlight reels. And when you're feeling in a slump, going back and watching old videos of when you did accomplishments that you're really proud of, or when something went well, just look at your old stuff or think about it. And I felt that last week. I forgot that I've done some amazing things at competitions. I've nailed routines under really high pressure situations. I've made pretty much all of my collegiate beam routines and gotten several 9975s. I've gotten 110. These are all big things that right now I'm like, am I capable of doing that?
Mhm.
But of course I am. I've done it before. And
Yes.
thinking about those things as well as on a smaller scale, yesterday before I went to beam and I saw that we had cold sets, I tried to think about the last times that I nailed a cold set and knocked it out of the park instead of all the times that maybe I didn't do so well at that assignment,
Yes.
but I knew I'd done it before, and so let's do it again today, and that gave me a little boost of, "I got this." And then the other thing that was a tool that I'm gonna take forward with me, and I've used in the past, is Jenny, our coach, came over to us before we started the assignment and said, "All right, today I want you to choose some affirmation and say it to yourself or to somebody else before you mount the beam for your cold set." And that's something that I do at meets. I go over to our manager and I tell her, "I'm strong, I'm confident, I'm a beautiful beam worker, I am consistent, I'm powerful. It's just another routine and I've got this." Or some variation of those affirmations. Those are ones that really set me in the mood for competing a beam routine. And that's just a little tactic I like to do, and it helps me believe it. I know we've talked about, not necessarily faking emotions you don't feel, but saying those things really does help me, and I've
Yeah.
seen it help me. So I said that to a manager, and I came up with a new one before I mounted the beam. Usually I take a deep breath and I say, "I got this," as I exhale. A long exhale with "I got this," which provides definitely confidence. But I wanted to pair it with something that gives me the mood that I need for the beam routine. Because "I got this," that's a little bit of a confidence booster, but it's not giving me a cue of what I need to do to actually get
Yeah.
it. And I've been thinking recently that being smooth helps me. So, like, thinking about just arms, like I said before, helps me, and also being powerful, like that jumping part of the series, but that goes for every skill in my routine. I find I need to be smooth with it, so, like, just the rhythm, making it nice. I know exactly what it means in my body when I say it in my brain. And same thing with powerful. Like, I'm going after it with conviction, not being tentative, but having that power. But they seem to be opposites, but for me, putting them together, that's a perfect combination for me. And so I decided that I wanted to say smooth power while I mounted the beam. And I tried it and it went well. So I think something like that I'm gonna bring forward. I said it for the rest of the routines, like just smooth power. And that was a cue that helped me out.
That's perfect. I love that. What do you think is the so here were some of your thoughts. Like I've made these. Of course I've got this. You thought about your successes. You were looking at your highlight reel. You were choosing affirmations. You were thinking smooth power. What emotion did all of those different thoughts generate for you?
I felt pretty calm and confident,
Yeah.
which is good. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't mount the beam every time thinking, I know this is gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
There's still those little doubts. Like I was still feeling a little bit uncertain about things.
Yeah.
And I just think that the recipe that those tools that I happened to use yesterday, I
Yeah.
know it sounds like a lot, but
No,
looking
and it's
back at
actually
what
it's so fun because we actually teach a version of this in our program, and I'll go over it real quick in a minute. So I love that you're bringing this up. It's perfect.
awesome. Well, I don't think that you have to be consciously thinking about those things every day and it's guaranteed to work. Of course, it's not guaranteed to work every time, but like when it helps, why not bring in
Yeah.
what you know can help you with your mindset a little bit? And some days are so much harder than others. Some days you got to pull out all the stops and really try really hard to make things work. Well, other days it's just natural and you feel like I'm just having another day and it's going awesome.
Yeah.
But I would say my emotions yesterday were more to the if there was a spectrum with completely doubtful, I don't think I can do this today, to I know I've got this confident side.
Mhm.
They were slightly past the middle of confident, and that's all I need. I
Yes.
nailed all my routines with that just slightly past the middle, and I think slightly worse than the middle, that's, when things start pulling to the other side and going down. Um, so I think that's important to remember that you don't have to feel 100%
Yes.
ready
Yes.
100% of the time. It's just like a little more than average, and you're probably gonna do amazing things.
Yeah. I love it. So we call them and emotions. Where you have your emotion that might be producing a more negative vibe in your body, and then an emotion that would be producing a really positive vibe of both in your body, and you can hold them both at the same time, and then your brain is like a flashlight. It can really only look at one at a time. So what happens a lot of times is, like you said, you start looking at, oh, all the times that I missed or the failed. So you're thinking about both. You're like, I've done this lots and I failed at this lots, and then you like look at the negative vibe. And instead, kind of going like, I can hold both emotions in my body, but I'm going to put the flashlight of my brain onto that positive vibe that is going to create the actions that I want.
Yeah.
And I love that. So I love that reminding that we can have both. And so what we talk about is develop, and I think coming back to, I can't remember if we've said that this is a thing that we want to. Okay, so we're examining what you did to recreate being able to do it again and again and again this week, because the ultimate result that you want is to make the lineup next weekend
Yeah.
or this coming weekend, right? Yeah,
As
and to do
soon
that,
as
like,
possible.
yeah, and as soon as possible, this weekend even, it would be our goal. That would be the result that we want. That would be the result we're like working hard for, right? And so to do that, I think you said some of this to me like before we started recording, but I'm just going to repeat them really quick that you just want to be ready. You want to be exquisite. You want to be sharp. You want to nail every routine and you want to show excellence on a regular basis, not perfection, but excellence on a regular basis all week. And so what we were doing was examining how did you create that result once this week so that we can create it again and again and again. And one of the things that we talk about is creating this meet mindset routine. And so the elements of a meet mindset routine are what emotion do you want to feel going into your routine? So what thought are you going to think to create that emotion? What affirmation are you going to tell yourself that will help you do that? And then using your mental choreography keywords throughout the routine.
Yeah.
And if you practice that, so I love how you've kind of put a flip on this for me because what we teach is if you practice that every single time you're doing a routine in practice, then by the time you get to a meet, it will become normal for your brain because it's really hard to put it into practice in a meet
Yeah.
when you're feeling all of the extra things if you haven't practiced doing it a lot outside of a meet. But I
Right.
think for you, one of the reverse engineers that we can do is using the exact same process that you would use to nail it in a meet every practice this week,
Yeah.
every turn, every time that you go up, knowing that may not mean perfection, but if we're going in and we are focusing our brain on the emotions that are creating the vibrations in your body that push you forward, that give you energy, that create that smooth power,
Yeah.
then you always take action out of your emotion. So those
Right.
actions are gonna, do. And if something happens, like your hips go out a little bit and a circumstance changes, but you can still kind of reverse engineer that emotion. Like, okay, what would I do if I was in a meet and this happened? I would
Yeah.
go and I would fix it between and I wouldn't freak out about it. I would be ready to like, and all those same things. So I
Mhm.
love how we've done this because I think you can really take this and go like, how can I do this every day this week? So my thought for
Right.
you would be you had a lot of natural motivation and energy today or yesterday. Was this yesterday's practice?
That was yesterday's practice. I'm
Yeah.
feeling pretty energized and motivated today too.
Yeah. What do we do to create this on a day that last night for some reason I had insomnia. I could not sleep. I was up for 4 hours. I asked Leah, like, "Can we push this back a little? Because I, like, am not coherent yet." And some days that happens, right? Some days you don't get enough sleep. Some days your stomach doesn't feel good and you didn't get enough food or like some days you had a bad test grade and you're going into practice not feeling as good. Some days circumstances come in that make it a little harder to get into that space.
Mhm.
So, what would you do even this week to get back into that space every single practice?
Yeah, I think all you can do is the best that you can do at any given moment.
Yeah.
And that's a great question. But first, I do want to react to a couple of other things that you said. What you were talking about with cultivating the same routines in a compete as practice reminded me of a quote that I love, and it has special memories associated with it because my teammate Ellie Lazari told me to compete like practice, practice like competition.
Yes.
Maybe it's vice versa. Practice like you compete, compete like you practice. She
Yeah.
told me that right before I competed bars at an elite qualifier that I needed a really high score to qualify, and I did that bar routine. I made it for the first time ever in practice or competition and got the exact score I needed to qualify as an elite, and that's one of my proudest moments of my life, honestly. But little does everybody else know is that I had the worst warm up ever. I think I cast it over 3 times, missed, like, a bunch of blinds. I didn't even warm up half my skills, and it was a surprise to me and everybody else that was in the group that I actually made my routine, but she told me that before I went, and it's always stuck with me, and I think that's, the pinnacle of sports is when you can perform the same at a competition or in a pressure situation as you do in practice on those good days. And that's always what we're striving for and striving to be normal. It's
Yeah.
not you don't have to go out there do anything different than you normally do in practice, just your gymnastics and trying to make it as normal as possible. It sounds so simple, but we all know it's so hard, and that's constantly what we're talking about on our team all the time is just normal. And then the other thing that I wanted to say related to making the lineup being my goal. And that is 100% an externally motivated goal. No, I shouldn't say that. It's very intrinsic motivation that I wanna do that, but
Right.
that's an external outcome that I don't have 100% control over.
Yes.
I know there are a lot of factors that go into that, and it depends on my coach's decisions and where everybody else on my team is at as well, because we've got 17 people on our team, and most everybody is fabulous at beam. And it's competitive to get put in the lineup, but I know what I can have the most control over is showing up every day and giving it my all and striving for that excellence on a regular basis. And when I can do that, I'm going to be proud of myself. And that's what matters because when I accomplish that excellence on a consistent basis, showing that I'm ready to go, I'm gonna feel ready and confident and excited to compete, and whether my coach puts me in the lineup or not, that's out of my hands. But if I can do that well, she's gonna have no choice to put me in the lineup because I'm doing so well, and that's what I'm striving for.
Yeah, and
Not
things like that are so interesting because they're both completely out of our control and totally in our control at the same time, right? It's that, like, yes, it is someone else's decision, but also we can create a circumstance that gives them a thought that, of course, they're gonna put us in the lineup, right?
yeah,
And sometimes we can't. Sometimes, like you said, we've done the best of our ability and other people have, done even better. And then we are excited because our team is super strong. But I know a lot of gymnasts listening today aren't necessarily in the situation where Leah is at of having to make a lineup every week, but you are in a situation of wanting to make a college team.
yeah,
You are in a situation of having dreams of the Olympics and dreams of making the national team. And so one of the things that I think is missed is we always talk about, and I always talk about, like, performing like you practice, being able to go out and compete like you practice. But I think what you're bringing up here is a key ingredient, and that's also practicing like you perform, like practicing like you want to compete. And
yeah,
so, because for you, making the lineup is the hardest part, right? Like when you're in a competitive team like you're in, making the lineup is the hardest part. Once you've made the lineup, like you're golden,
if
right?
you're in the lineup, you're most likely very ready.
Yeah, yeah, and so figuring out this idea of how do I show up every day in practice and give that extra edge, give that extra oomph as if I am out on the floor, the lights are shining, the arena is cheering, and I am gonna be doing that beam routine today, right now, in this moment in competition, and being able to bring that edge to your workout. Now, there's a level of mental energy that we can't keep up, like a 4-hour practice, keeping that kind of edge every day would be quite difficult. So you have to manage your expectations in like what you're able to bring to that, but bringing it at the key moments in practice, when you need to show a routine, when you're doing a cold set, when you're, hitting those things, being able to put yourself back in that same mindset, I think is part of the key to this idea of like making the lineup, making a team, is not just bringing the energy of being able to compete like you practice, but it's being able to practice like you wanna compete.
Yeah, and it's not gonna be perfect every day, and I know that. We all know that. Probably 1 out of 4 days are gonna be awesome, 1 out of 4 days are gonna be horrible, and the other 2 are gonna be kinda medium. But what can we do to elevate each of those circumstances just a little bit?
Yeah.
And for me, something that I've been focusing on a lot is being present.
Yes.
I tend to get ahead of myself a lot. Like, we'll be warming up, running, the first thing at practice, and I'll be thinking about beam, or I'll be thinking about the bar routines I need to do, or I'm thinking about it like 3 hours before practice while I'm watching my lecture for class. And I'm thinking about, "Oh, I need to have a good day at practice today."
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of extra stress. It's so much easier when you just be present. It's something I struggle with so badly, but sometimes at practice, we're running. I'm like, "We're just running now." And then when we're just stretching. This is all I need to focus on. It's just the stretching, not looking ahead to the next thing, but focusing where my feet are at the time.
Yeah.
And it just makes it so much easier. And you deal with things as they come along. And same thing during an event, like, this is just a routine or just a kip or whatever it is. And then the next one, it's the same thing again. And you just keep moving forward until it's the end of practice and you get to go home and eat a yummy meal and rest up and do it again the next day because it's just another practice. And then
Yeah.
it's just another meet. And really celebrating the small wins along the way is so important and having fun. But when it feels overwhelming, trying to just focus on what I'm doing right now. I've definitely improved on that a little bit in the past month or so.
Yes. I can tell.
Thanks.
And I think, like, wrapping up, um, it's just this, like, both and all the time. It's this when we can put ourselves in a place of expectation of things going well and feeling good and being in this we say positive mindset, but it really is, it's the, like, focusing your brain on the things that cause those positive vibrations in your body, focusing your brain on those successes, focusing your brain on that, of course, even the like, well, it's not going to have a perfect day every day, but like, why not? Like, let's just expect, of course, today is going to be an amazing day in practice. And when it's not, it's okay too. Like,
Yeah,
being able to be in the like, in the both and where we're not like, everything has to be perfect, and we've talked so much about this, is, like, when you say something to yourself, it only matters how it feels inside your body. When
yeah,
you tell yourself at practice, "I've got this," and you don't believe it, and your brain is like, "No, you don't," that's not helpful. But when you're, like, in the moment, you're like, "I've got this," and you totally believe it, it's so helpful. And so
yeah,
continuing to focus your brain on thoughts that actually create those positive feelings in your body is going to be what gives you the results. And it's not about feeling positive all the time. We're gonna feel negative. There is negative moments in life and in gymnastics, and we can feel those, and those are fine, and we've got all the tools that we need to deal with them. But the more we can put ourselves in a place where we not expect, like, in a, like, it has to be, but expect in a, like, of course it's gonna be
yeah,
a good day, a good practice, a good set, a good, all of that. So I love what you said. I know, like, I was coaching another girl who was talking about, well, the one that I said had a, like, the board was hard on her vault. So
yeah,
then at the next meet, even though she, like, vaults spectacularly, like, she has an amazing vault, she fell at the second meet. And when we kind of, like, really finally figured out why, it was like, "Well, I fell at the first meet, so I'm gonna fall again." Instead of being able to, like, focus her brain on the fact that she has like, people's jaw drop about her vault. Like, she has an amazing vault, and instead of being focused on, like, "I am a natural vaulter, I am powerful, I've got an amazing vault, vault is so easy for me," all her brain could go to is the negative. And so, like, when we can allow the negative to be there, allow the doubts to be there, but then refocus is when we're gonna have success, so
totally. I love that. And I just thought of something that oftentimes I do this, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. really nothing is happening at the moment, but we turn it into a negative. Something that's not a big deal, we turn it into it's horrible and it's gonna go badly and start worrying about all the things when really nothing has gone wrong yet.
Yeah.
When instead we could just leave it at nothing
Yeah.
or turn maybe it's too hard to turn nothing into a positive, but, like, we can just leave it neutral and just see what happens and move forward. But it's sometimes rare when nothing's going on, and then we're like, "It's gonna be awesome," like, and elevating it to that next level and starting an upward spiral of thoughts, and, I think you're superhuman if you can do that a good majority of the time, but, like, what about focusing on leaving nothing at nothing or turning it into a positive, not just automatically going into negative?
Yeah.
Um, Gotta overcome some negativity bias there, but
Yeah. Well, I was I've been doing some new learning and new coaching techniques and stuff. And one of the things we were learning about, and I've kind of talked about this, but it put it into new words for me, which is, our primary brain, our lizard brain, our unconscious brain, and then
yeah.
our prefrontal cortex, our human brain, our evolved brain, our conscious brain. They don't actually know how to talk to each other. Like, they actually speak different languages.
Huh.
And so learning how to talk to and so it's your unconscious brain that its job is to protect you, its job is your survival. And so the reason it has that negativity bias is because it's constantly looking for what are all the things that could kill me? What are all the things that could go wrong? That's its job. Its job is to be the radar and to constantly be like, what's out there that could go wrong? And so one of the things that we have to learn to do is like understand that it's speaking that language because it's just it has a position for the government that's supposed to like look out and see all the threats. And that's all that its job is to do. Like,
Yeah.
but just because it sees one doesn't mean that it's actually threatening. And so it's actually asking us. So the
Mm,
unconscious brain is asking the conscious brain, well, what if this bad thing happens? And when we can answer it and we can be like, well, then this. And then it's like, oh, okay, you've got this. We're safe. Well, what if this? Well, then this. Oh, okay. And so instead, what happens all the time is we like let our conscious brain do the talking and let our unconscious brain do the talking and our conscious brain listens and then is like, oh, okay, that's how it is. But
interesting.
instead, what we need to do is the opposite, is like our conscious brain is just the worry ward. And so
Yeah.
we have to take our conscious brain and be like, no, 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 we're okay. And listen to our conscious brain because our conscious brain actually knows what's going on. But we just do the opposite when it tells us all these catastrophe things that could happen. We're like, oh, it must know something that I don't
Yeah.
know. But it doesn't. It's just doing its job of bringing up what could be wrong. And so,
Yeah.
like, switching that instead of being the conscious brain is the listener and the reactor, and the unconscious brain is the director, we just wanna switch it.
Yeah, we can train our conscious brains to be less gullible and
Yes.
more influencing a voice of reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And one of the best language to the unconscious brain is specifics. So you coming back to this idea of thinking about very specific moments in time where you've had those successes before.
Yeah.
That is the language of the unconscious brain. The unconscious brain can't think of like principles and overall things. It can only think of specifics in the present. So when your conscious brain can speak, when you can speak to that unconscious brain in a way of like, no, remember we nailed it then. And so we're going to nail it now. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Cause it can speak that language. So anyway, super
Cool.
interesting. We'll talk more about it, I'm sure, as we go. But
I love it.
such a great episode. Thank you for sharing so much about what you're learning in this. And I hope this helps you just like have an amazing week.
Totally. Thank you. I think this has been my favorite episode so far. I feel like we talked about a ton of different things, and
Yeah.
I hope that listeners can at least pick one or two things that maybe have resonated a little bit more than the rest, and hopefully it makes some positive changes in
Yeah.
people's
Yeah, speaking of that,
day-to-day.
we would love to hear your comments of, like, things that you've
Yeah.
learned from it, how it's helped you, so please, leave us those comments, leave those reviews, we would really love to hear the feedback from you. We also have a Q&A feature on there, so you're welcome to put down at the bottom of the podcast any questions that you have that you want Leah to cover, you want me to cover, in future episodes, so
Amazing. Yes, if this has helped you, I think the number one thing that if you feel the need to return the favor, you can leave us a review and
yeah,
take 30 seconds to tell us how this has impacted you because oh, I can't wait to read them and that would be, super heartwarming if you've gotten something out of this and like we'd love to know. So yes, please leave a review, ask a question. I know that's a lot of things you can possibly do, but the other way that you can reach us if you want to have a more personal message instead of dropping a review, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm at Leah Clapper and I do my best to answer everybody's questions and respond to the DMs that I get. So
yeah,
feel free to reach me there
same
as well.
for us too. We're at gym.mindset.academy, and you can DM us anytime. We're always happy to help. So, all right, guys, we'll
Awesome.
see you next week.
Sounds
Bye.
good.